Are you struggling to improve at Forza Horizon 5? You might have practiced hundreds of laps and tried dozens of tuning setups with little to no improvements. Here, I'll show you how you can instantly improve your times by seconds. All you need is a more expensive gaming PC. Let me explain. I'll use a world record run on this track as an example. It looks completely normal, except it isn't. Let's start at the beginning of the lap, where the in-game timer is exactly at 0 seconds, and fast forward the video by exactly 60 seconds. Suddenly, the in-game timer is at 59.8 seconds. Where did the other 0.2 of a second go? Let's compare it to a normal run and do the same thing. All of our timers are starting at 0, but if we fast forward it by exactly a minute, the world record run falls 0.2 of a second short. So the in-game timer for the world record run is running approximately 0.33% slower, and therefore giving him an unfair advantage. This happens in lots of runs, so we can safely assume that the video speed has not been tampered with. But what about the in-game replay? Fortunately, you can choose any run on the leaderboard as a ghost and race against it, which is exactly what I did here. At 57.8 seconds real time, you can see that the ghost is clearly clipping the checkpoint, but the recorded run is far behind it at the exact same time. This tells us that the game automatically speeds up the ghost to match the final in-game time. And this is how you gain an advantage in Forza. We don't know what exactly causes this, but it mostly depends on the track and your PC hardware. Generally, the faster your PC, the slower your timer. Consoles and most low to mid-end PCs don't have this advantage. If you want to check, you can use any custom track that uses the custom timer from the event lab, which is not affected by this bug and shows you your real time. I'm using this blueprint as an example. Make sure you don't pause the game or encounter any stutters, and then set a clean lap. If these two timers are almost exactly the same, it means your game is running as intended. But, as you already know by now, that is not always the case. In the worst case I've seen so far, you can get between 4 to 0.6 of a second advantage per minute. On some tracks, this is enough to bump up any top 50 times to world record. If you want to do that, here are the specs that give you that much advantage. Fortunately, this doesn't seem to have an impact in online races. The in-game timer will work normally for everyone. This means everyone will race on an even playing field. Or do they? Now that we have figured out the timer, it's time to see if game physics are the same for everyone. Playground Games and Turn 10 have access to this game's code. Surely they would know if something is wrong with their game, right? Well, it took them over a year to create a system that detects and removes glitch times on the leaderboards. As you can see, it wasn't really effective. It actually ended up removing as much legitimate times as it did cheated times. So here we go again. The players, with less tools, doing developers' job for free. Anyways, I asked one of my friends who uses an original Xbox One to set a fast lap time around this track. He did one rolling lap. I limited my frame rate to 30 to match his, and then started chasing his lap time. It took me over 100 laps just to barely match his time. I then switched back to 60 FPS and continued. Not even 10 laps later, I managed to beat him by half a second. Now that's a big difference to be caused by only the frame rate. And before you say it, reaction times didn't really matter for the car and track combination we were using. The physics are clearly affected by different hardware and different frame rates, but how? Well, we don't know exactly, but here is a simple test where we can clearly see the difference. All you have to do is hold throttle and take a loop. If you are going too slow, your car takes the loop normally. If you are going too fast, your suspension bottoms out and your car clips the loop. If you are going at just the right speed, however, your car becomes Schrodinger's cat. Here's what I mean. This game has undeterministic physics, which means that the same actions don't always result in the same outcome. If you take the loop normally once and then rewind, you might clip the loop on your next run, despite entering the exact same inputs. Basically, the outcome of your runs are randomized. This RNG only has a small effect on the normal gameplay and is not really concerning. In a 60 FPS scenario, I took the loop 100 times and only clipped it in 8 of them. I did the same thing using 30 FPS, but this time, the clipping became much more frequent. Out of 100 tries, I clipped the loop 44 times. That's over 5 times the difference. But what changes between 30 FPS and 60 FPS? To answer that, I recorded the suspension telemetry for all of the runs. Each color represents a different wheel, and higher values mean more compression. Here's what the suspension telemetry looks when I put some of the 60 FPS runs together. The pattern is fairly consistent, but there are clearly some inaccuracies in some areas. Here are the 30 FPS runs, which look similar, but there are some key differences. In this area, for example, the decompression is totally different between 30 FPS and 60 FPS. The clipping is mainly caused by this area, where 30 FPS remains fully compressed for a while, whereas in 60 FPS it's much more likely for the suspension to decompress before bottoming out again. And that's everything. In conclusion, having a better PC can cause your in-game timer to run slower, giving you an advantage on the leaderboards. It is also clear that different frame rates and hardware affect physics, but it's hard to say how, and there aren't many ways to test it. The future Forza titles are supposed to come out on a brand new game engine, so here's hoping they won't have the same issue. Thanks for watching and goodbye.